Hey, welcome back to Disruptor Media. Thank you for joining us today where we're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, which is a month-long celebration in the U.S. that honors the histories, the cultures, and the contributions of Americans whose ancestors came from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and the Central and South America. It's observed from September 15th, and we have a few days left here, ladies, till October 15th of each year. And it's a very unique span that recognizes the independence days of several Latin American countries. So that's pretty cool. Costa Rica, El Salvador, Mexico, Chile, Belize, Honduras, of course, many of the cities and countries within South America. And today, we're so happy to have one of our founders and favorite Boricuas here with us, Dr. Eve, who is going to take us through some of the celebrations of Hispanic Heritage Month, and especially ones that's personal to her. So thank you, Dr. Eve, for bringing us into this conversation, where we're also going to cover the topic of Marianismo just a little bit. And I look forward to that because that's new for me. But I love that you brought that up to us last month, Dr. Eve. So this is the topic that we're going to expand on today, so that we all can learn more about Hispanic heritage and all of the efforts in the country.
But before we go to the first question, can I just ask a question? So, can you clarify, Dr. Eve? Because what is the politically correct way in the community, like to be called Latinx or Hispanic? Is there a certain proper and correct way of addressing the community?
You know, I really think that that's based on where we are geographically. You know, so we don't, you know, here, I know even in where I live, in the area that we live in, we don't refer to Latinx. You know, you're all Latinos, you know, so I think that's really subject to where you are and I mean, and for the elders, there is no Latinx, right? We're all Latinos. You know, when you speak to the younger crowds, it's like, you know, it's me personally, I'm a Latina.
Right.
So, but that's my personal take on that.
Right. That makes sense. And I've always learned, because I've taken Spanish for several years in school, and the reference has always been Latino is masculine or addressing the general population. Latina is feminine. But as of recent, too, I've heard that as well, Paula. Latinx and then also Latin. So it just ends with an E.
Yeah.
That's also supposed to be a gender neutral term for people who have the heritage. But like you said, Dr. Eve,
but we have to be careful with that, because we may be focusing on gender neutral here. And that's what I mean here in the US. But that doesn't mean that it's global.
Right.
So if I go to certain parts in Latin America, that term is still unfamiliar. Because the issues of gender and what's gender neutral, I mean, that's not a global topic.
True. Yeah.
You know, so that's why I say, you know, and it's deeper than that. The answer is not that simple. But I always refer to who is our audience and where are we geographically.
Right.
You know, because now that we're on Zoom or we're on whatever platform virtually, you know, we have to be inclusive as well. You know, so I'm glad that you raised that. It's raising awareness, and for folks that are probably outside of the U.S. In the closer borders to the U.S., they're probably asking themselves now, well, what do you mean Latinx?
Right.
Yeah. It was a term that that's been used, especially in one of my affiliates at school. They use that term for the affinity. And I was like, okay, so what is the politically, because you don't want to offend anyone, right? Because everybody identifies differently. And so when you're asking someone, or I guess the best way to do it is just ask, how do you identify? That would be the proper way to do it.
It was interesting because when I spoke to a couple of folks in Cuba, they never heard of the term Latinx. I found that interesting. In certain sections, when also a few folks, even in Mexico, I found it interesting that this concept of Latinx, was even it was in play, right? And so.
So something just that we as in the United States, like all of our other terminology that just pops up, is only exclusively in the United States, you think, and not necessarily on the global? Because I'm just.
I don't think that Latinx is just the U.S.
Okay.
What I'm saying, what I'm trying to say is that that I am mindful of, where we are, and yeah, I think the U.S. in some aspects, are more thinking more outside the box, on a lot of in a lot of areas, as we think about gender, and that's not necessarily so for other origins in our lovely planet.
Yeah, that's fair. Gender neutral, even that term itself, I first heard that in retail. As there's always been a men's and a women's section and kids section. And then obviously you like what you like. So you just go and purchase from whatever section you want to purchase from for whatever reason. So that is fair to say. Thank you for clarifying that in your perspective, Dr. Eve. But we want to talk about how we celebrate in this month, okay? But then also, too, what's some of the traditions like? So, Dr. Eve, one of the questions that we have from us is if you can share any traditions or celebrations that have been especially meaningful to you during Hispanic Heritage Month.
Well, I have to say, Hispanic Heritage Month it's more than a commemoration, right? It's a living, breathing expression of memory and resilience and joy. And for me, one of the most meaningful childhood memories has always been around the gatherings, the family gatherings, around the food, the music, the stories, and the humor. It's the elders sharing their wisdom. It's history being passed down from one generation to the next. And when we have these wonderful celebrations throughout the month, you see a lot of that wonderful, rich history coming to life, and the food, and the salsa, and the bomba, and those dancers, and it's just beautiful. And that's what we do also, not just during the Hispanic celebration, but for the Puerto Rican Day Parade, for example. You can't have a Puerto Rican Day Parade without having some salsa music in the background, right? Or some bomba playing in the background. And that arroz con pollo, just, So it's all of those wonderful things. And I know I look forward to Thanksgiving, because that's another way where we can bring a lot of our culture and history and rich history that we could pass down out to my grandnieces and nephews. And it's so that they can continue on with that heritage.
So what are some of the traditions in Thanksgiving? Elaborate a little bit on that.
We'll have, first of all, it's like everyone does, their potluck, right? And everybody brings in the dish, and you have your music going from the mornings, and then we all try to actually sit down at a specific time. We say our grace, and then we have that pernil, that wonderful turkey, and then those pasteles and all that wonderful food. And then we break wine, but we don't use wine. We have coquito.
Coquito!
And then you have, some folks take their dominoes and they start playing dominoes. Other folks kick the cards out. You have the kids running around, which is all cool. And you have some of that music playing, and so it's, and then the ladies tend to, we keep those customs, right? We end up in the kitchen, doing the cleaning and the putting things together, getting the pastries out and the dessert, and having their own conversations happening. But what I'm appreciating more and more in this generation is how there's now, you see the men and the women, right, in the kitchen cooking together, and competing on whose recipe tasted better than whose, and so that's fun. That's fun. We're seeing that breakthrough now, where it's no longer men in the living room and women in the kitchen. There's collaboration happening.
Collaboration on both sides. That's beautiful. I have a question, Dr. Eve. So I just want to clarify for our audience, both your maternal and your paternal side are of Puerto Rican heritage, correct?
Yes. I am a first generation here in the mainland. but both sides of my family are Puerto Rican. And I have to tell you, as a Puerto Rican woman, the rhythms of bomba en playa, the aroma of like arroz and gandules and the laughter that fills our home, that's our culture. It's our inheritance. It's an inheritance of resilience. Because from the very, very beginning, right? What did they say even about the, in Africa? What did they do, right? They embodied the dance and the rhythm and the
big time
eating together. And that's what we do, right? So these traditions are how we reclaim joy and we celebrate survival and honor our ancestors. It's an honor, particularly honoring our ancestors' sacrifices.
Yeah.
So that's what's fun. So during Hispanic Heritage Month, I take pride in lifting those stories of women and men who dare to dream beyond the limits imposed on them and celebrating how our identities continue to evolve with grace and dignity and power. It's yummy.
It's very yummy and very rich. I just want to add that shout out to my Boricuas one time, okay? Because honestly, now my family, both sides, maternal and paternal, are from Trinidad. However, from a very young age, our families has always been intertwined with Puerto Ricans. And so I've gotten to experience this rich culture at a very young age. I've gotten to learn the salsa. And it's so funny, Dr. Eve, that you mentioned Hispanic Heritage Month, and then also for like the Puerto Rican Day Parade and these gatherings with the families and the food and the music. But honestly, that's like a typical Saturday at so, like that was us.
It is. It's our therapy.
Yeah, it really is, because it's so beautiful to experience these really big families where there's so many cousins, there's so many aunts, and it's a friendship, it's not just family. There's so much camaraderie. It's loud, it smells good. People, you're gonna get fed, okay? And if you, after you finish that plate, there's more food if you want more food. And it's just so it's so beautiful. And the family would just pour even outside of the house into the streets. And we're talking about the sports and everything. I was very fortunate to go to Puerto Rico at a very young age, with an extended family member. And I was in El Barrio, I wasn't even in like the cities and laid up in a hotel. I got to really experience like waking up with the cookies, and then having the roosters outside, the caballos across the street. And it's just such a beautiful culture. And I can imagine other cultures as well. So even as you're speaking about it, Dr. Eve, I have nostalgia, and I'm very grateful to participate. We don't get to always celebrate in everyone's cultures because we don't know that much. Yeah, but I'm just so.
Well, I'm a little mad that I didn't get in. I'm not in the area where I was raised. The culture wasn't there, or at least it wasn't near where I was raised. So I'm a little mad that I didn't get
sorry.
Listen, you just have to come to Puerto Rico and visit.
You gotta come to
here.
That's true. We need to take a trip to Puerto Rico to Dr.
I'm taking a trip.
There you go.
Otherwise, I'm at the Malpicas. Like, that's my family, the Malpicas. Shout out to the Malpicas because they really, really took care of the family. I love it. Thank you for sharing so much, Dr. Eve. One of the next questions we were wondering, Dr. Eve, is for those who may not be familiar with this term, if you could share your perspective on the concept of Marianismo and its cultural significance.
Movement. Can we? Because I'm having problems pronouncing it. So
let's break it down.
Dr. Eve, break it down.
Roll your R's, right? So Marianismo.
Break it down again. Just
Marianismo. Yeah. Marianismo. Yeah. Think of Maria.
Nismo. Okay.
There you go. So Marianismo is an often misunderstood term, especially when you view it only through a Western or clinical lens, because traditionally it refers to the idealization of women, modeled after Virgin Mary, right? So La Virgen Maria is where Marianismo came from, and and when I say model after the Virgin Mary, it's that sense of being pure, nurturing, and self-sacrificing. So, but when we look at Marianismo through a strength-based lens, I like to look at it through that lens. I think it's very empowering in many ways. So follow me here, because Marianismo is not a term that's often looked through those it's not looked in that way. But if we examine it, it's not about weakness. It's about sacred endurance. It's the quiet, dignified leadership of women who hold families, faith, and communities together. Like, I grew up in a Puerto Rican household as the youngest, with 5 brothers, mind you. My sister was the eldest, but she was, she remained in Puerto Rico. And so I often say I was raised in the intersection of Marianismo and machismo, right? My brothers were encouraged to be bold, strong, independent, and I was taught to be kind, helpful, and humble. And because I was brought up and raised in the South Bronx, it was my mother hardly ever let me go out, right? It's like, and so my brothers were my shield. So whatever they did, I did. And believe you me, they didn't like that. They didn't have to have their little sister going along with them. Do whatever you do,
Right.
Like, but there was something about that, something about being around them, and also being around the community. Like, you had to have a tough skin. When I was growing up, it was a lot of crime and violence and domestic violence everywhere. It was rough, and having that tough skin, but yet at home, I still had to be humble and helpful and serving, and my mother and my grandmother, like many women of their generation, unknowingly also reinforced certain rules, right, in the households that I think encouraged machismo in the household. Like, my brothers were always protected and they were always being excused from things. Like, I had to go to school every day, but they had a sniffle and they had to stay home for a week.
Wow.
We understand that, right?
Yeah.
But, I have to say, Marianismo for me, it was about teaching me to serve, to nurture, to yield. It wasn't all out of malice, though. Like, it was cultural survival. When they were teaching me in those sense, those were the tools that my grandmother, the elders, my great grandmother, even my mother had to really navigate. They had to navigate a world that often left women with little choice but to lead quietly and love loudly. And it was pretty interesting, right? Because as I got older, I realized how deeply those messages lived in me, right? I wanted to do what my brothers did, to have the same privileges, but I also felt like the pull to care for them, to put others first, and that tension kind of shaped how I saw myself as a woman, as a daughter, and later as a professional. And I got to tell you, when I began studying trauma and resilience, I came to understand this through epigenetics, right? The science that shows how our ancestors' experiences are passed down through our genes. And that's something that's not often talked about either when we think about Marianismo. Like, our great grandmothers, especially in the late 1800s and early 1900s, they lived through colonization, poverty, displacement, hurricanes, wars, right? And yet they raised families. They created communities, and somehow they found joy and lived in that joy, right? Very spiritual. I mean, they were the poster children for resilience, and the resilience didn't vanish when they passed. It lives in us. It was passed down genetically. We carry those traits in our genes, and that in itself, it's a beautiful thing. It's in our DNA. So it's why we know how to survive, rebuild, and nurture. Not just because of what we learned from our mothers 3 or 4 decades ago. It's already built in our mechanics, right? But here's the paradox. That same endurance also trained us to overgive, right? And to sometimes even it silenced us, And this humbleness where we couldn't even celebrate our own successes. This was our expectation. And that's where Marianismo becomes both a blessing and a burden.
Yeah.
So, and I'll share a story. So early in my career, I dreamt of creating, and even before, I think since childhood, seeing how poverty and systemic, let me not even talk about systemic policies, but how things were operating in the 70s and 80s that just perpetuated more intergenerational trauma and mental illness, that was hard to live by. And I've always dreamed of creating these programs where we could really talk about mental health promotion, about giving tools, providing, helping parents, helping children, helping teachers, learn how to manage stress, how to identify mental health conditions so that they could be addressed earlier. Like if you could have these answers, building strong systems and school systems where these shelters that we call school actually become a place where we have social emotional learning and support. But it was a dream, right? And we wanted this dream to not just reach hundreds, but thousands. But it was met with so much resistance, right? By my own family, right? By my elders, by my grandmother. Because here I am, I'm going to college, I'm getting my PhD. We're actually running these programs, and it was lovely. But my grandmother and my elders were, although they were proud of me, at the same time, I almost felt like there was this deep disappointment that I wasn't fulfilling the social script, right?
Right.
Like, are you supposed to be married by now? You're supposed to be staying home and caring for your husband. Like, what you going to bring him for dinner? Books? My grandmother was
no.
Your husband and your children, and she meant it lovingly, but it reflected a deep generational belief system that doing my Marianismo, my Virgin Mary role.
Yeah.
It's when you said it did just trigger, like, I think it's just embedded in us. Like, we can't deviate from the traditional script of what's been passed generation to generation, right? Just like what you're talking about, what you want to do with your program. My first time going out as an entrepreneur, I told my mom, and my mother literally stopped talking to me for a good week because she couldn't understand why I was going to go out on my own to be an entrepreneur versus traditionally following the tradition of being employed for the next 20, 30 years and supporting the family. So that triggered what you just said, just triggered, because it's like, it's a generational thing where we pass down, like, you take care of your family, you go to school, the whole thing now is get a college degree, then you work, you support your family, then you pass those traditions and those values down to the next line. But in the process, the pressure is that you have to do better than the next line.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And I got to tell you, so I moved out pretty young, and I had to do that because I felt like it was my way to survive. Our family went through a lot of unfortunate circumstances and with the intergenerational mental illness and trauma and violence, it put me in a situation where I had to move out earlier on. I mean, very early in life. And that in itself was hard because how dare I leave my home, my house. It's like, I'm supposed to be, another caretaker, and it's like, you don't do those things, you don't live without getting married. What's wrong with you? But it forced me to work, getting to what you just said, Paula. I had to work twice as hard to excel in both nurturing my home and my career, and when I settled and got married, it was like having to play both roles, and that was taxing. I mean, I had to pour myself into my work, developing school-based mental health programs, right, in Washington Heights, across New York City schools. And doing all of that and still trying to have a home and still be a caretaker for the family, somehow, some way, becoming that matriarch. It's like the torch was passed down, when my mother passed, and it was a lot, but I took it graciously but I didn't know anything else but that role, right? Now, here is something interesting. And it still resonates, and I'm actually writing about it. When I finally retired, I retired a 30-year career developing school-based mental health programs. And in my retirement celebration, my entire family was there. And it hit me when my sister said, they do this whole thing about what you've accomplished. And they had, all the different things that I had done in the city and the things that I had done, even working outside of my career, working all the work that I've done at Ground Zero for 9/11 and the different things that I have done for other organizations. And my sister says to me, and she said it with tears. She said, I knew that you were working with Derek Jeter doing these programs, in the city. And I knew that you were working in Ground Zero, but I never knew what you did. That moment, it hit me profoundly because I realized just how much of Marianismo still lived in me. The humility, the self-silencing, that you do, but you do it quietly, or you do, but you become invisible. That belief that our worth must be quiet. I couldn't believe that I didn't even share. Now, mind you, they were always, my family and I are tight. We're very close.
Yeah.
But that it hit me that they didn't know. They knew, but they really didn't know what I was doing all these years, except that I was coming home late. I was leaving early in the morning, coming home late every day. And that's what I call the shadow side of Marianismo, when service becomes self-erasing. That it's not, that we need to be careful about, so I began to reframe it. So Marianismo isn't just about sacrifice, right? It's about sacred leadership, leading with heart and intuition and presence. It's all those wonderful things, it's the grandmother praise and protests. It's Marianismo is the mother who nurtures and educates. Marianismo is the daughter who dreams and disrupts. And so when we honor it that way, we reclaim it, power, and reclaim that's, and in reclaiming that, that's when the miracles begin to flow again. And that's why I want to see Maria, it wouldn't be beautiful if we can help folks understand Marianismo in that light.
Yeah.
Well, then that brings up a question. And in today's current climate, based on what's happening in today's current climate and the younger people that are coming up now, what is your advice to the younger people in terms of their achievement and balancing their life and balancing their mental wellness? What kind of advice would you give to them?
My hope is that, and my advice is to continue to heal the patterns that no longer serve us while still preserving the wisdom that does. To respect where our families have come from, but know and take what will make us strong and not what doesn't serve us. That we move from survival to thriving, from scarcity to sufficiency and beyond, from silence to expression. I see a generation of Latinas and Latinos and Latinx redefining what it means to lead, not just in our homes, right, but in technology, in wellness, in business, in social change. That's who we are. Because we're no longer just the caregivers. We're the creators. We're the innovators. We're the educators. We're the healers. We're learning to balance the sacred feminine and sacred masculine within us.
Yeah.
So to lead from empathy, but also with courage, is a beautiful thing. And that's what I would want. And I believe, that if we could look at the beauty in Marianismo, not just those lenses in which we see it, where it's taxing, where it's suppressive, I believe we could break cycles. I believe that we can honor our ancestors by doing what they couldn't, by dreaming boldly, by owning our voices, by claiming abundance without guilt, because abundance is our birthright.
Yep.
And when we stand in that truth, we not only honor our past, we create a new legacy for the generations to come. And isn't that a beautiful thing?
Such a beautiful thing.
It is.
That's pretty strong. I'm liking that. Hopefully, the younger generation will take that on.
Yeah.
And they are, because we're seeing it. We're seeing the men and women working together. We're seeing men stay at home while women are having their careers.
That's true.
We're seeing men cooking in the kitchen while women are doing the plumbing and finding grace in that. We're seeing women in places where we couldn't find ourselves before. You know, I've been many a times in my career being the only female in a room, being a research scientist or working in whatever it may be, even within my own profession. And mind you, also being not just the only woman, but minority woman, you know?
Yeah.
And so now this minority is a majority because we're all a majority now, because we are all growing together. We are a collective, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. But give the advice on that, because there was a question, and I was in a room when at one of my panels at my college, and a young lady spoke up and said she was the only one in the room, and she wasn't. She was like a little scared, or like, how do you feel about how do you navigate that when you are the only one in the room, being a minority and being a woman? You know, how do you navigate that and still stay within your truth?
I mean, I could only speak for what I do.
But give us the guidance.
What I do is, first of all, I give grace to my ancestors when I'm in those situations, because I'm like, this was your dream that I am living. This is what you passed forward in my epigenetics. When we were talking about epigenetics and DNA, it was that resilience and perseverance that allows me now to show forth in the DNA. And so now I can pass that forward to the next generation, know that my nieces and my grandnieces and my great grandnieces are going to be in a plentiful full of room with women. Look at the women that are here with me right now. You and oh my gosh, and Shayna. We're in the room right now where this used to be 3 room of men. We're 3 women.
Yeah.
Of color. Powerful.
Right. Powerful.
You know, so one, give grace to our ancestors, because what I think when we come from that angle, we are now empowered to be there and stay there.
Right.
To allow our voice to be heard, it's important. So this mindset that we are not smart enough, big, you know, no, that mindset, we are smart enough because we are in that room. There's a reason why we are in that room. If I believe in a universe, the universe has me there for a reason. I'm going to show you my fullest self.
Right.
So it's I don't no longer look at it in a way that where's all the woman and woe is me. I celebrate that I am a woman, and behind me right here is all my ancestors that I carry. So in essence, there's a lot more women in that room.
Right.
You just can't see them, but they're there.
But they're there.
Yes.
That's a powerful statement in itself, Dr. Eve. Thank you for sharing and enlightening, us in this room, but then our audience as well. Audience, please make sure that you are dropping comments in the comment box and letting us know how you experience this for yourselves, the Marianismo, and being able to stand fully in your light, in your truth, and in your voice. We'd love to hear feedback. I do want to drop a quick fun fact because I didn't know this, but I've heard of machismo before. So thank you, Dr. E, for bringing in the conversation about Marianismo, because that was fairly new for me, and that's why we thought it was such a really great topic of conversation to have, just in case that was the case for anyone else. But also, too, I learned that these terms were actually coined by a political scientist whose first name is Evelyn, which is also Dr. Eve's name as well. So we're well, Evelyn P. Stevenson. So that's actually pretty cool. And lines up really well for this conversation. And also, too, oh snap, Dr. Eve, you still there? Because you froze up on us. Oh,
she froze.
Okay, she dropped out. I'm actually curious when she joins us again. I'm curious to know because Dr. Eve has such a lovely husband that we've had the pleasure of meeting. And
Yes.
just curious of the actual balance that's happening now in that household between Marianismo, the way that Dr. Eve grew up, and then also how they're finding balance now. And I can only imagine because Jim's awesome. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
absolutely incredible. But while she figures out some tech stuff, I'm sure, I did want to also bring into the conversation that she brought up, Dr. Eve brought up really great points about our spaces in these professions and in the community where we're caregivers, we're healers, and um, doctors and educators, and
Leaders.
also, what'd you say, Paula?
Leaders.
Leaders,
We're just leaders.
generalists,
Generals. Yeah.
leaders. Um, However, we also have been having a conversation around how much the job landscape is changing.
Yeah.
And, as we look at these professions, we find it very important that we're preparing ourselves for the future, which is now. The future is here. It's not just tomorrow.
Dr. Eve is back
Now.
in.
Oh, good.
I mean, I,
Dr. Eve, you're back. So I'm gonna pause on what I was just saying because I wanted to make one more statement after sharing the fun fact that Evelyn P. Stevens is the one who coined the terms machismo and marianismo. We just found it really cool that you ladies share the same name. But also, yeah, that's pretty cool. But also, we we're grateful that we had the pleasure of meeting your lovely husband. And we wanted to make sure that there is balance in the household right now with this Marianismo, okay? Because Jim is lovely, okay? But just knowing like your background and your culture and how caring you are, but also how much work you're doing, that you are able to find balance inside of your home.
Oh, no, definitely. I love the fact that he loves to cook. I
Yes.
don't, first of all. So let me just say
Dr.
that,
Eve's house. We're coming to Dr. Eve's house.
so
Yes.
Thanksgiving, he's the pavo man. Like he'll make the pavo.
Yes,
My
perfect.
brothers would run away from the kitchen if they knew I was doing the pavo. But I didn't mess it up. And I can tell you one thing, I'm really good with wood crafting. I love just breaking something down and and just I love refurnishing furniture. I mean like be doing furniture. I'll be that person who would love to just tear down all of these sheetrocks and like put brand new ones up and let's start painting, let's start remodeling. It's like
Hey.
that would be me.
Oh, that's so cool. That fits perfectly in this conversation of where we were talking about this gender roles, right? Like
Yeah.
typically it was perceived that men was doing these things. And if there were women that were a part of it, we were in the shadows, right? Or they were in the shadows of that. And you couldn't find men in the kitchen unless they were eating, right? So it's wonderful even to know that that is something that you two get to share and experience and embrace from one another, um, rather than running away from it. I'm not that much of a fan of turkey unless, unless someone knows how to cook it. So now that we know that Jim knows how to cook it, we'll be at your house for Thanksgiving.
But I tell you one thing too that I really kudos to him because this notion of being macho and not expressing emotion, that's a real theme in families.
Yeah.
And it's sad because what ends up happening is that as women get older, they want more affection, more communication, and kids are no longer in the house and now they're retired. But if you don't have that, it becomes difficult. And it's not that a man who grew up with this notion of machismo, if he hasn't had any other exposure, then it ends up causing a lot of separation or a sense of void in relationships when you're older because of that lack of communication or showing emotion and so I kudos to him because he's able to cry in a movie and know he's still a man, and that he's able to enjoy the kitchen. The kitchen for him is therapeutic, and that is absolutely fine.
Yeah.
And so it's to be able to have that balance. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
But that takes communication. It takes being able to think outside the box, and that's why I say, we do, when you have one woman in the room and you carry your ancestry there, and you can show that to other, to the younger ones, that this is possible.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And when we could have a relationship like this where we're communicating openly or doing things that aren't gender based, because those are all social constructs, right? It's not like, who said that? Where is that written in stone? And so, at least that's my philosophy. It brings more richness to a relationship.
Yeah.
And that's another topic that we'll have to talk about.
We'll have to talk about it, but I have to say, hanging out with you guys when I was in Brooklyn, that your relationship, you and Jim balance each other out. It's a beautiful thing to see. And I have to say that it's the aspiration of a relationship that I would like to have.
That's a fact.
Yeah. So
I
just wanted to let you know, because it was just fun seeing the dynamic between the two. And so it's just it was when you find like what you guys have, you can see the relationship that that kind of relationship is the kind of relationship that you want with yourself, with your partner. So it was just kudos, because it's my aspiration to find a relationship like that.
Then, right? So my advice to you is to see it already in its presence.
That's right.
Because it is already written that you'll have
That's
it.
right.
And I'm not talking about thinking it's magically there. But what I'm referring to is, like, if we can envision it and feel it, we'll be more receptive to see it. But if we're coming from a place of it doesn't exist, we may not even see what's right in front of us. That's what we are programmed our brains to already operate and think and react to. So it's like, wait a minute, I'm going to change that, because I got to tell you, I had already envisioned it. But had I not envisioned it, like many women in my community, in my circle, I expect it, envision it, it's here. And so I was open to it, right? Because other than that, I was like, I don't want to see anyone, I just like, get away from me. Right? It's like, ooh, but it's yeah, now I'm claiming it because I deserve it. I claim it because it is my birthright.
It is your birthright. I'm claiming it too.
Me too.
I'm claiming that.
And now we know, Dr. Eve, we hope to have you back next month, because we would love to have you on for topics of relationships. I think that's definitely important. It's actually one of the top 3 researched conversations on YouTube, on this platform. And it's so important, right? Where we thrive in one area of our lives, we want to thrive in the others as well. And I think it's so important. I actually love to when I find married couples, when I have a moment, I actually talk to them both to find out what's the glue to the relationship, to see where they are in that current moment and hear about it. And I think that our audience will love that topic as well. So we look forward to having you back for another juicy conversation. And maybe we can even bring Jim in, because we want y'all to meet Jim. Jim's awesome. We like
him. It'd be interesting. Also, it's relationship to money. Like when we having discussions, and this is what Marianismo, Machismo really hones in, like just having conversations about money. About saving, the spending, the planning together,
mindset. I think that's really what stood out for me just now when you were talking to us, Dr. Eve, is really this envisioning process, right? Because again,
it looks very different. It looks very different for both. Like how we would operate is like that old book from many years ago, Men from Mars, Women from Venus.
Right.
Oh my gosh, is there so much truth to that?
Yeah.
I actually read that book.
So I just want to say, I want to say thank you. Thank you for honoring Hispanic Heritage Month by having this discussion today. I appreciate that. I think it is important, and it's a wonderful thing. It's the way other cultures get to learn more about our culture, and even within the Latino culture, right? Because we just because we're all Latinos doesn't mean that we eat the same thing that we, the Mexicans, Peruvians, Brazilians, it's so.
That's right.
I think the community, just the community in sense. I was like everybody, because everybody's culture is different, but it's also we have similarities. And it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful to learn from everybody. But I'm interested in
Our interest lies in the food. So to the audience, drop us in the comment box. Let us know if you're also celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, or if that's your heritage, where your family hails from. We want to know. We want you a part of our community. Make sure that you're subscribing and hitting the notification bell so that you know when we have our next topic. And we have one more thing for you. As I was mentioning earlier, is that driving this conversation and expanding on it at our third annual virtual summit that's happening on October 25th. All you have to do is one or two things to attend. You're going to either scan that QR code that you see right next to my big head right here with your phone, and or you get to click the link down in the description box. You don't want to miss this conversations about the practical insights, how to upskill and reskill and make it so important. And you get to meet more of our team. We'll have more guest experts as well to expand more in these conversations. And especially to my youth, we're going to have the youth there too. All generations are welcome. All, invite your friends, invite your family. Even if you're retired and not working right now, let me tell you, job landscapes, the way that everything is changing, our financial economy is going to impact you too. So please make sure that you're coming to our it's free, our free third annual virtual summit. All you got to do is scan the QR code or hit the link down in the
description. I just want to say, we had a call, and Dr. E was on this call too, with our keynote speaker, and what she's going to talk about.
It's going to blow.
You don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss it because it's going to be what's the word? Huge.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome.
You don't want to miss it. So I would take notes, make comments. It's just going to be. I'm excited.
Yeah, make sure you're there.
And if I may, we also have our Wellness Wednesdays.
Come on.
This is where we have a lot of this rich conversation about making, how to create miracle visions, right? And how to utilize AI tools to enhance a dream that you have. We talk about how we just had a conversation on, are you ready for an LLC? This coming Wednesday, we're going to have a gentleman who's going to talk about how he dreamt it, built it, and monetized it, and now how he's doing some crazy figures with just working out of his garage. So it's so join us on a Wellness Wednesday. It's a simple 30-minute chat where we just drop them seeds, and that's where we bridge mental wellness and financial wellness. So I hope you join us.
Please join us
for our Wellness Wednesday at Disruptor DAO.
Yeah, all you gotta do is make sure that you subscribe to this channel that you're watching us on right now, and make sure you hit the notification bell, because that's going to give you the reminder for when we go live with that conversation with Sam next Wednesday. Yes. Dr. Eve, Paula, thank y'all so much for this conversation. It was so rich. It was so awesome and lovely.
Yes.
Appreciate you, ladies. So awesome. And then Zawadi did comment on just cooking, just saying. So we got some validation. She has memories of a soup that he made 2 years ago. Soup.
Okay, what kind of soup was that? What kind of?
Now we have extra questions.
Yeah, we have questions. So we're gonna go to Puerto Rico, or we're gonna come up to New York too, or at least I'm gonna have to go to New York.
I like Puerto Rico better.
Okay, we're gonna go to Puerto Rico to experience the cooking. I'm back to food again. It's food. I'm food.
Well, it's going to be his cooking, not mine. But enjoy my company.
That's fine.
Yeah. All right, ladies. Well, thank you so much again for having us here, for having me here. I say us, but for having me here. It's been great.
See you next time.
Next Friday.
Yes.
What's next